Have you ever witnessed a moment where arrogance was crushed in an instant? A person so convinced of their own power, only to realize they had made a terrible mistake? Picture this: a luxurious private airport where sleek, multi-million-dollar jets glisten under the afternoon sun. On the tarmac, a man in a perfectly tailored suit strides forward, exuding authority. This is William Roth, the CEO of a major airline, a man who believes he controls everything. Bookmark. Go back. But then, right in front of him, a well-dressed black family steps onto a Gulfstream G650, one of the most expensive private jets in the world. With just one glance, Roth is certain they don't belong here. He marches toward them, blocking their path, his voice laced with authority. "This is private property. What do you think you're doing here?" Without waiting for an answer, he snaps at the security team. "Get them off this jet, now." A heavy silence falls over the tarmac. The crew, the airport staff, and other travelers nearby freeze, their eyes widening in shock. But there's one thing William Roth doesn't know. The jet he's so arrogantly guarding doesn't belong to him. It belongs to the very family he's trying to throw off. And this is only the beginning of his worst nightmare. The world seems to stop. The tension is thick, pressing down on everyone watching. The Harrington family stands firm at the foot of the jet's staircase, blocked by a man they've never met, a man who's now ordering them to leave. Miles Harrington, tall and composed, turns to his wife Celeste. She doesn't speak, but her eyes burn with quiet fury and restrained pain. Beside them, Darren, their 17-year-old son, clenches his fists while Avery, just 12, instinctively presses closer to her mother. Miles exhales slowly, keeping his voice calm yet firm. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." Roth crosses his arms, smirking with open condescension. "No, there hasn't. I know exactly who this jet belongs to, and it's certainly not you." Celeste grips her daughter's hand gently, steadying her. She's dealt with this before, but rarely has the disrespect been this blatant. Miles remains composed, but there's an unmistakable edge in his voice now. "Then perhaps, before forcing us off this jet, you should double-check your facts." Roth doesn't even consider it. He turns to the security guard standing nearby and gives a curt nod. "Escort them off the premises. I won't ask again." The tension peaks. The sound of the security guard's approaching footsteps echoes across the tarmac. Darren glares at Roth, his voice sharp with anger. "Do you even know what you're doing? You're kicking us off our own jet." Roth lets out a short, mocking laugh. "Right, and I suppose next, you'll tell me you own the whole airport too?" But just as security reaches Miles, a deep voice rings out from the jet's staircase. "Wait." Every head turns toward the voice. Standing at the top of the stairs is Captain Novak, the aircraft's pilot, a seasoned man with silver-streaked hair and sharp, discerning eyes, someone who has spent his life in the skies. He descends the stairs slowly, his expression unreadable. Then, with deliberate authority, he delivers the blow that changes everything. "Mr. Roth, I'm afraid you've made a grave mistake. This jet does not belong to Atlas Skies." A pause. Then his next words cut through the silence like a knife. "It belongs to them." A stunned silence falls over the tarmac. Even the distant hum of jet engines can't drown out the sheer weight of the moment. William Roth stands frozen, his eyes widening in disbelief. The truth has been exposed. And this is only the beginning. For the first few seconds after Captain Novak's revelation, time stands still. Under the unforgiving glare of the afternoon sun, William Roth's face turns rigid, as if his brain is struggling to process what he just heard. No, this can't be. The words don't leave his lips, but they're written all over his face. Darren crosses his arms, his eyes gleaming with a cold amusement. "I guess now you understand who's really out of place here." Roth's gaze darts between Captain Novak, the Harringtons, and the gleaming Gulfstream G650 behind them. The flight crew stands at the top of the stairs, watching with quiet acknowledgement. The airport staff, pretending to go about their work, are clearly listening in. The humiliation washing over Roth is unmistakable. "No, this isn't possible." His voice wavers, stripped of confidence. "Atlas Skies was negotiating to acquire this jet. It can't belong to you." This time, Miles steps forward, his presence commanding. "You're wrong. We purchased this jet 6 months ago. I can show you the ownership documents right now, if you'd like to continue embarrassing yourself." Celeste crosses her arms, her voice smooth but razor sharp. Or would you prefer to call someone from your company to confirm? Roth takes a deep breath, desperately trying to salvage what's left of his dignity. He yanks his phone from his pocket, his fingers trembling as he dials. The entire tarmac is silent, watching, waiting. And then, his phone rings. He presses it to his ear. A few seconds pass. Then Roth's face turns ghostly pale. Whatever words are being spoken on the other end hit him like a freight train. He swallows hard, his grip on the phone tightening. Then slowly, he lowers it. Every eye's on him. The seconds drag out like an eternity. Finally, he speaks, but the authority is gone from his voice. I may have made a mistake. Darren lets out a sharp scoff. Celeste raises an unimpressed eyebrow, her silence speaking volumes. Miles, arms crossed, fixes Roth with a cold stare. That's it? A mistake? Nobody says a word. Roth can feel the weight of every single gaze on him. The anger, the humiliation, the crushing reality that he had judged the wrong people. And what's worse, this moment is being recorded. At the edge of the tarmac, a quiet airport worker holds up his phone, capturing everything. And in just a few minutes, this video will hit the internet. And William Roth, his nightmare has only just begun. But the worst was yet to come. At the edge of the tarmac, a quiet airport employee continued recording on his phone, capturing every second of the unfolding disaster. And in just a few minutes, that video would hit social media, spreading at a speed Roth would never be able to control. William Roth's face turned ghostly pale. The phone in his grip was useless now. The media machine, one he had always thought he could manipulate, was about to swallow him whole. Across the tarmac, an airport technician quickly typed something on his phone. His thumb hovered over the screen for a second. And then, with a simple tap, he pressed post. The storm had begun. Miles Harrington didn't need to say another word. Everything had already been made clear. With one steady motion, he placed a hand on Celeste's back, silently guiding her and the kids up the stairs to their jet. None of them looked back, but Darren did. Just before stepping inside, he paused. Then slowly, he turned and locked eyes with Roth, not with anger, but with a knowing, almost amused smile. You said we didn't belong here, Darren shrugged, and yet, we own this place. Roth's lips pressed into a thin line, but he couldn't respond. The shame burned through him. Around him, airport staff stood still. No one stepped in to help. No one spoke up for him. He was alone. As Celeste stepped onto the jet, she closed the cabin door behind her, firmly, decisively. The final door of respect had just been shut on William Roth. At another corner of the airport, a different employee scrolled through his phone, his eyes widening as the video appeared on Twitter. And then the headline that would destroy Roth's reputation forever. Airline CEO kicks black family off private jet, then finds out they own it. Within minutes, the comments flooded in. Oh my God, this man just destroyed his entire career in 2 minutes. You can buy a first-class ticket, but you can't buy class. He's so used to controlling everything, he couldn't handle the truth. Within 30 minutes, the video had over 500,000 views. Within an hour, it had surpassed 2 million. Corporate fallout. Atlas Skies faces a crisis. Inside a sleek, glass conference room on Madison Avenue, New York, the atmosphere was suffocating. Phones buzzed non-stop, emails flooded in, and in the center of the chaos, a large screen replayed the viral video over and over again. A voice sliced through the tension, sharp and furious. What the hell is happening with Roth? A senior executive slammed a hand onto the table, his face red with anger. Oh God, did he really do this? Another board member asked, his voice heavy with disappointment. The investors were furious. They had poured hundreds of millions of dollars into Atlas Sky's Fly with Dignity campaign, a marketing effort built around the promise of luxury and inclusivity. And now, their CEO had just single-handedly destroyed that message. A chilling voice cut through the commotion, a corporate spokesperson from the board of directors. Call an emergency meeting, now. Above the chaos, a family in reflection. Meanwhile, high above the clouds, the Harringtons settled into their seats. Celeste took a sip of water, staring at her phone. Her expression wasn't smug, just tired. Thoughtful. What do you think he'll do next? She asked Miles. He scrolled through Twitter, shaking his head. There's not much he can do. This is bigger than him now. Darren leaned back in his seat, smirking. Well, it's definitely not Roth's lucky day. Avery, still confused, looked up at her mother, her voice small. Is this going to affect our family? Celeste ran a gentle hand through her daughter's hair, her voice calm. No, sweetheart, but it's going to change a lot of things, and he's going to have to face the consequences. And in that moment, none of them realized just how big this was about to become. This wasn't just a viral video. This was a full-blown storm. A storm that would sweep away William Roth's career, dragging him from the heights of power into the depths of disgrace. And more importantly, a storm that would open new doors for the Harrington family. They just didn't know it yet. The crisis deepens, the fall of a CEO. Inside the private cabin, the only sound was the gentle hum of the jet engines as the Gulfstream G650 taxied toward the runway. The Harringtons were ready to leave, but out there, in the world below, things were just getting started. Celeste's phone buzzed. She glanced down at the screen, eyebrows slightly furrowing. "Who is it?" Miles asked, still reading news updates on his tablet. Celeste turned the phone toward him, an unknown number. Seconds later, a text popped up. "Priya from CNN. We would like an exclusive interview with the Harrington family regarding the Teterboro incident." Celeste exhaled slowly, setting her phone down. And just like that, the storm is officially here. The boardroom showdown, Roth's reckoning. Hundreds of miles away, inside the Atlas Skies headquarters in New York, the boardroom had turned into a war zone. The massive screen in front of them replayed the viral video. Roth's smug arrogance, his condescending words, his humiliation. Then came the moment of realization, the shift in his face when he learned the truth. A loud bang echoed as one of the board members slammed his fist against the table. "What the hell were you thinking, Roth?" Another voice, cold and calculated, followed. "Do you have any idea how much money we've sunk into Fly with Dignity, and you just destroyed it in one afternoon?" Roth sat frozen. His forehead gleamed with sweat. I can fix this," he stammered, though even he didn't sound convinced. A financial executive scoffed, shaking his head. "No, you can't, because this isn't about you anymore. This is about the millions of people watching this unfold in real time." Another director tossed a printed report onto the table. Atlas Sky's stock had plummeted by 7% in just a few hours. "Investors are calling non-stop," one of them muttered. "They want answers, and if we don't give them the right ones, they'll find a way to push you out themselves." Silence. Then finally, the chairman leaned forward, his voice quiet but firm. "Roth, do you have anything to say before we make our decision?" Roth swallowed hard, and for the first time in his life, he had no answer. Because deep down, he already knew what they had decided. His time was up. Roth clenched his fists, his eyes darting between rage and desperation. I just acted on instinct," he muttered, his voice hollow. Even he didn't believe his own words. Across the long conference table, the chairman, an older man with sharp eyes and a head of silver-white hair, tapped his fingers lightly against the polished wood. His voice was slow, deliberate, and filled with authority. "Then perhaps it's time we act on our instincts as well." A long silence stretched across the room, and Roth understood. They weren't keeping him. The flight out. A daughter's question, high above the chaos, the Harrington's Gulfstream G650 ascended smoothly, leaving Teterboro Airport behind. Inside the cabin, Avery was still thinking. She turned to her mother, her voice quiet but thoughtful. "Mom, do you think he realizes what he did wrong?" Celeste gently brushed a hand over her daughter's hair, her expression pensive. "That's not the most important thing, sweetheart." Avery blinked, confused. Celeste continued, her voice calm but firm. "What matters is that the world realizes that the people who stayed silent before are finally paying attention, and more than anything, that we don't let this define our path." Miles nodded, his gaze drifting out the window to the vast blue sky stretching endlessly before them. "We did the right thing." But deep down, Miles knew this wasn't over. Because when they landed in Miami, when the flood of media calls kept coming, this storm would only grow stronger. And at that very moment, William Roth was preparing his final move. Touchdown in Miami. The storm hasn't passed. The Gulfstream G650 touched down at Miami's VIP terminal, gliding smoothly before rolling to a stop. Outside, the brilliant Florida sunshine nearly masked the media firestorm raging across the internet. But the Harringtons knew this wasn't something they could simply leave behind. As Miles unbuckled his seatbelt, his phone wouldn't stop buzzing. A quick glance at the screen revealed dozens of messages, missed calls from partners, friends, and reporters. Celeste stood up, adjusting her elegant dress, but the concern in her eyes was unmistakable. "They're waiting for us out there, aren't they?" Miles sighed, nodding. "And not just the media, the ones who want us to speak and the ones who want us to stay silent." Avery clung to her mother's hand, whispering, "I don't like this, Mom." Celeste squeezed her daughter's hand gently, offering reassurance, even as she herself felt uneasy about what was coming next. At the VIP exit, a crowd of reporters was already gathered. Some held microphones, others had their phones recording. The moment the Harringtons' car pulled up, the flashes started. "Mr. Harrington, Mrs. Harrington, do you have any comments on the William Roth incident? Roth has been summoned by the board. Should he resign? Are you planning to sue Atlas Skies?" The questions came at them like bullets, but instead of stopping, Miles simply placed a protective hand on Celeste's back, guiding her and the kids straight to their car, without saying a single word. Not because they had nothing to say, but because they knew, sometimes, silence speaks louder than words. Thousands of miles away, William Roth sat in the Atlas Skies boardroom, facing his reckoning. The once mighty CEO no longer looked the part. His tie was gone, his shirt collar unbuttoned, beads of sweat forming on his brow. Across the table, a finance director cleared his throat and read aloud from a printed report. "As of now, the video of your incident has reached over 10 million views. Our stock has plummeted 12% in less than 24 hours. Major investors are demanding an explanation." Another executive slid a newspaper across the table toward Roth. The headline was brutal. "William Roth, the face of racial discrimination in aviation." Roth's fingers curled into fists. Anger surged through him, but there was nothing he could do. The chairman leaned back in his chair, his voice razor-sharp. "William, do you have anything to say before we make our final decision?" Roth swallowed hard, then forced himself to sit up straight. This was it, his last chance. I take full responsibility for what happened. I was wrong." The room fell silent. A few board members exchanged glances, perhaps shocked to hear him admit it. But then, Roth pressed on. "I want to make this right. I don't want to go out as a disgraced man. Give me a chance to fix this." The chairman studied him carefully. Then, he slowly took a sip of coffee, setting his cup down deliberately before responding. "William, understand something. This isn't about you anymore. This is about the company. This is about our image to the world." And then, with chilling finality, he delivered the death blow. "You are no longer fit to be CEO." At the Conrad Miami Hotel, the Harringtons had finally settled in. Miles sat on the couch, scrolling through the latest headlines. One in particular stood out. "Atlas Skies announces William Roth's resignation, cuts ties with disgraced CEO." Celeste scanned the article, her expression unreadable. "Do you think he truly regrets it?" she asked. Miles pondered the question for a moment, then shook his head. "I think he regrets losing everything. Not that he did something wrong." Darren scoffed, leaning back in his chair. "Well, he finally got what was coming to him." Avery, still the only one holding on to innocence, whispered, "But people can change, right?" For a moment, no one answered. Then Celeste reached over, gently tucking a stray curl behind Avery's ear. "They can," she smiled softly, "but only if they truly want to." Celeste looked at her daughter, a flicker of sadness in her eyes. "Maybe, but only if they truly want to change." Miles set his phone down, his gaze thoughtful. If he really wants to make amends, he might come to us. And Miles was right. At that very moment, Linda Chang's phone buzzed. On the screen, "William Roth." Linda answered, her voice steady. "I'm listening." On the other end, Roth exhaled, a heavy, exhausted sigh. The kind of sigh that came from a man who had lost everything. I want to meet them. I want to apologize." Linda didn't respond right away. Instead, she glanced over at Miles and Celeste, waiting for their reaction. Celeste folded her arms, her expression ice cold. "He wants to meet? Now?" Linda nodded. "He said he wants to meet at a neutral location. No press, no media, just a private conversation." Miles took a slow breath before turning to his wife. "What do we do?" Celeste was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, she spoke. "We'll listen to what he has to say, but that doesn't mean we have to forgive him." The storm seemed to have settled. But in reality, The aftershocks had only just begun. A night in Manhattan, the final meeting. The Skyline Lounge, perched atop a high-rise in the heart of Manhattan, was eerily quiet. Soft golden lights reflected off the floor-to-ceiling glass windows, revealing the breathtaking cityscape of New York at night. The Harringtons had arrived first, choosing a secluded table at the back. No cameras, no reporters, no media circus, just a conversation. Celeste stirred the ice in her glass absent-mindedly, her eyes never leaving the entrance. "Do you think he'll actually show up?" Darren asked, his tone both skeptical and curious. Miles leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "If he truly wants to make amends, he'll come." And less than a minute later, the door opened. William Roth walked in. But he was no longer the man they had seen on the tarmac. The polished, arrogant CEO was gone. No sharp, tailored suit, no smug, self-satisfied grin. Instead, a tired, broken man stood before them, dark circles under his eyes. His posture weighed down by something far heavier than exhaustion. He scanned the room briefly, then walked toward them, not with the commanding stride of a man in power, but with hesitation. Linda, the Harringtons' media manager, rose from her seat first, her voice professional yet neutral. "Mr. Roth, this is Miles and Celeste Harrington. This is the meeting you requested." Roth swallowed hard, then slowly pulled out a chair, sitting across from them. "Thank you for seeing me." His voice carried no authority, no demand, only humility. No one responded immediately. Celeste's gaze was unflinching, unwritable. "I assume you have something to say?" she asked coolly. Roth nodded, his hands clasped tightly together on the table, as if searching for the right words. I don't even know where to begin," he exhaled. "I was wrong. I was arrogant, prejudiced, and dismissive. There's no excuse for how I acted." Silence. Celeste and Miles didn't react. So, Roth continued, his voice thick with something unfamiliar, regret. "I lost everything. My career, my reputation. And I know, I deserve every consequence that came my way." His voice wavered slightly, but he pressed on. "But I didn't want to walk away from this without at least saying, I'm sorry. A real apology." Celeste crossed her arms, her expression sharp. "Sorry for what exactly?" she asked. "For getting caught? Or because you truly regret what you did?" Roth froze. A long, heavy silence stretched between them. Finally, he took a deep breath and answered, "Both. I've lived my entire life in a world where I was never challenged," Roth admitted, his voice quieter than before. "I thought power, status, and control meant everything. But in a single moment, I realized I had nothing but hollow arrogance." Celeste's gaze remained sharp, unwavering. But for the first time, she saw something in Roth's eyes. Something rare. Something she wasn't sure he had ever shown before. Sincerity. For the first time since the conversation began, Miles finally spoke. "So what do you want now?" Roth clasped his hands together, then looked up, his voice rough with emotion. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to help." Surprise flickered across Celeste's face. "Help?" Roth nodded. "I'm not the CEO anymore, but I still have experience. I still have connections in the industry. I understand how the system works, and I want to use it to fix what I did wrong." Miles leaned back in his chair, studying him. "And what exactly are you proposing?" Roth took a deep breath and met their eyes. "I want to support your initiatives. I want to contribute to Wings of Diversity. If I can, I want to help pilots, engineers, and aviation professionals of color get the opportunities they deserve." This time, even Darren looked surprised. But Celeste wasn't convinced just yet. "And you?" she asked. "Are you doing this for us? For society? Or just to save your own reputation?" Roth exhaled, his shoulders slightly slumping. "I'm doing this because I've realized something. Some mistakes can't be undone, but some actions can prevent new mistakes from happening. And if I can do something to make even the smallest difference, then I want to do it." Miles and Celeste exchanged a look. They both understood. Whether Roth had truly changed or not, this was an opportunity. Miles placed his hand on the table, his voice low but firm. "We can't make a decision right now, but if you're serious, prove it with actions, not just words." Roth nodded. "I will." The three of them sat in silence for a moment. Outside, New York continued to move, indifferent to the tense conversation unfolding inside the lounge. Finally, Roth stood, nodding once before turning to leave. Celeste watched him go, saying nothing. The silence lingered until Darren broke it. "Mom, do you think he's really changed?" Celeste sighed. That's not as important as what we do with this opportunity. Miles nodded, his eyes already set on the road ahead. We won't let someone else's mistake define our future. We'll decide our own. And somewhere, William Roth stood at the biggest crossroads of his life. Would he truly change? Or was this just a desperate attempt to salvage his dignity? Only time would tell. But the Harrington family had already made their choice. They would continue moving forward, with or without William Roth. And the storm? It may have settled, but the sky would never be the same. A new chapter begins. 1 week after the meeting with William Roth, the atmosphere had shifted. The Harrington family was no longer just the victims of a racial discrimination scandal. They had become symbols of change. Across the news, headlines dominated the media. From tarmac scandal to aviation revolution, what is the Harrington family creating? A new door opens for Black pilots. Wings of diversity takes flight. For Miles and Celeste, this wasn't a victory. It was only the beginning. Wings of Diversity Headquarters, Miami. A brightly lit auditorium, its walls lined with banners of soaring aircraft and words of empowerment. Hundreds of young faces filled the seats, waiting anxiously for the event to begin. They were students, dreamers, individuals who once believed the sky was out of reach. On stage, Celeste Harrington stood tall, her voice steady, filled with emotion. We cannot control how others see us, but we can control how we respond. She paused, scanning the room where hope shone in every gaze. We chose not to let discrimination define us. We chose to turn a moment of humiliation into a movement of change. And today, we are proud to announce Wings of Diversity is officially taking flight. The room erupted in applause. Students in the front row cheered, some even wiping away tears. Because from this moment on, a door had opened. Miles stepped onto the stage beside Celeste, taking her hand. He looked out at the audience, his voice firm and full of purpose. We are not just giving out scholarships. We are building a system, a path for you, for those who have always been told they don't belong. And to prove that, he gestured toward the massive screen behind them. The words appeared in bold, shining letters. Aviation Scholarship Fund for Underprivileged Students, funded by William Roth. Silence. For a long moment, the entire auditorium was stunned. Then, the whispers started. Roth? Isn't he the guy who? Wait, the same William Roth who caused the scandal? Some students exchanged skeptical glances. Others crossed their arms, visibly uncomfortable. But Celeste didn't let the doubts linger. She raised a hand, commanding attention. I know exactly what you're thinking. I thought the same thing. She turned toward the front row, where a group of students waited for an explanation. I don't forgive easily, but I believe in actions more than words. And when someone who has made mistakes chooses to dedicate the rest of their life to correcting them, we can choose to watch and see if that change is real. Miles nodded, adding, William Roth was removed from his position as CEO, but instead of running away, he made a choice to do something that matters. Is it enough? I don't know, but if it helps even one person, then it's worth trying. At first, a few hesitant claps. Then, from the front row, a young woman stood up. Her voice wavered with emotion as she spoke. I don't care who he is. All I know is that because of this program, I have a chance I never thought I'd get. A second student stood. If this helps us, then I think it deserves a chance. And then the applause grew, louder, stronger, unstoppable, until the entire auditorium was on its feet. Wings of Diversity wasn't just a program anymore. It was a movement. In the shadows, a man watches from the far side of the room near the exit. William Roth stood alone. No reserved seat in the front row. No speech on stage, no expectation of applause. Just a man, silently watching, listening to every word, taking in every reaction. Celeste had been right. Forgiveness doesn't happen overnight, but the chance to make things right, that's what truly matters. As the ceremony came to an end, Roth turned away and walked toward the exit. Waiting for him at the door was Linda Chang, the Harrington's PR manager. Where will you go now? Linda asked, her voice neutral, not judging, just curious. Roth took a deep breath, his eyes drifting toward the endless sky stretched before him. I don't know. But maybe I'll start over. A new journey. 3 months later. At dawn on the runway of a small airfield in Florida, a group of students from the Wings of Diversity program climbed aboard a sleek new training aircraft. The logo of the program, a pair of golden wings, was emblazoned on its side. Beneath it, in bold, determined letters, "Elevating Dreams." From a distance, Miles and Celeste stood side by side, watching as these young dreamers prepared for their first flight. "We did it," Celeste whispered, a soft smile forming on her lips. Miles wrapped an arm around her, his eyes filled with pride. "Not just us," he said. "Everyone who believes in change helped make this happen." Above them, the sky stretched vast and unbroken, clear, limitless. And as the first Wings of Diversity aircraft took off, it carried more than just students eager to fly. It carried a message. No matter where you come from, no matter who tells you that you don't belong, you can still reach the sky. A legacy beyond the clouds. The training aircraft soared upward, climbing into the deep blue expanse, taking with it dreams once grounded by doubt. This was not just another flight. It was a symbol. A family once dismissed, judged unfairly, had refused to let anger consume them. Instead, they chose to turn injustice into purpose, to carve a path for those who had been left behind. Miles and Celeste remained on the runway, watching the plane disappear into the horizon. "We didn't just change our own story," Celeste murmured. "We changed the story for so many others." Miles squeezed her hand, his gaze never leaving the sky. "And the sky," he said softly, "is always open to those who dare to rise." They hadn't let a single moment define them. Instead, they turned it into their legacy. Your story matters. Have you ever been judged unfairly because of how you look? Have you ever felt that no matter how hard you work, someone still sees you as an outsider? The Harrington story isn't just about them. It's about all of us. It's about the moments we were doubted, the times we were underestimated, but instead of letting those labels define us, we can use them as fuel to prove them wrong. We can rise, we can build new paths, and most importantly, we can help others do the same. If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of your own journey, hit the like button. Share this story. Let this message reach someone who needs to hear it today. And most importantly, subscribe to Aiva Stories. This is where we tell the stories that matter. Stories of strength, resilience, and moments that change lives. Remember, the sky has no limits, and neither do you. See you in the next story.